So in our last video, I showed the example of the quality of analysis for supplier selection. You guys have the answer in a PowerPoint. I'm not going to go over that. Very kind of simple math. So you take a look at that and see if you got it right. So, kind of continue into our topic. We're going to talk about integration. We start talking about that, and I also kind of presented some outsourcing and offshoring examples and definitions, right? So, outsourcing is when a company decides to purchase from a supplier instead of doing by themselves. And the offshoring is when a company decides to go abroad. So, taking the production outside the US and can do outsource and offshore at the same time. So buying from a supplier, let's say in China, or establishing a new plant in China from the same company, would be only outsourcing, right? So the kind of the opposite of that is taking something that actually is done by a supplier and integrating into their own process, right? So that's called vertical integration. And there's basically two types. Either can take something that's done by a supplier in terms of kind of raw materials and parts, and that's called backward integration, or forward integration, which is when I take some part of the distribution network, right? So here's kind of a simple example. Let's say that a company assembles cars and they buy from a engine manufacturing company, and then they decide that, well, engine is very sensitive. There's a lot of instability going on, blah blah blah. I want to have that within my power. I want to have to be the supplier of the engine, right? So going that way, they would do something called backward integration. So go there and purchase the or purchase the supplier plant or establish a new plant to supply engines for their manufacturing process. So some of the things that kind of might influence that, if there is issues in delivering, for example, if there is some cost and hidden cost, if there's some technology that the company actually already possess and wants to use that technology or that knowledge, or it's good at something, and think that only the suppliers will give them that advantage. Okay. Another example here is what called forward integration. Let's say that we're going to buy our dealership, right? So you know that today dealerships are owned by, not by BMW or by Honda. They're owned by entrepreneurs, by other people. And then, let's say that they want to have, BMW official store or something like that. So there's, some kind of advantage in doing that. Some reasons why the company would do that. For example, in the computer industry, that happened right when Apple started having its own stores, right? So before the Dell don't have a store, I think. Microsoft didn't have a store. Sony didn't have a store, right? So they were selling their products in other people's stores. So Apple thought that be part of their strategy to actually connect to customer. That's what they do very well: connect, integrate, kind of provide customized solutions. So they decided to have the retail, right? And some other companies are doing that. I saw kind of Sony stores, Microsoft stores, and that kind of stuff. So it could be kind of, how can we be closer to our customers? You have more reliability on the delivery part, or just be more in contact with the customer. Okay. So just kind of a simple example here. Let's say that we have a ketchup plant. That's the first. That's what the company owns, and you have to make ketchup, right? What is inside a ketchup? That's a good question. you know. So now I want you guys to go there to your kitchen and look at the ketchup and read what's inside. You'll be amazed. but we know for sure that tomato paste is inside ketchup, right? So tomato grading stations and tomato suppliers, and then you have retail sales and you have consumers, right? So this is kind of the simplified supply chain. One step that we can do, ketchup manufacturing, right, can say, well, we here at, I don't know, Heinz, I don't know what kind of ketchup do you guys like? We don't want only to bottle and manufacturing ketchup. We want to have the tomato paste factory as well. So they go there and purchase a plant or build a plant that do that, right? So that we call backwards integration. Another option here is okay. Let's uh, own the retail. Let's say that we want to have ketchup now. Imagine this: ketchup now will be an experience, right? So we're gonna have different flavors and different things to do, and put it in a lot of other stuff like gourmetize, whatever it is. And then we're going to have a retail store, like a ketchup store, right? Okay, we can sell mustard on our ketchup store. I'm good with that, but with mostly ketchup, right? And if you think it's crazy, you've never been to the honey stores, right? Which there is in, I think, Charleston I went to, and Savannah as well. There's a Savannah uh, honey or something like that. And here it is. I got Google it, have some pictures. There's a store that sell only honey, right? So we can have our ketchup store. It's not that crazy. And you have different flavors, different ways to buy it. Have another image here. Doesn't it look good? Premium honey products, right? So we're gonna do the same thing with our ketchup. So basically, kind of to summarize, I have some options in terms of anything that I need to produce my product or service. I can either make internally, so I can integrate backwards or forwards, right? I can integrate some parts that I'm not producing now and I'm going to start producing. Or the other way around is, or I can make it in another shore. I can make it in another country, or I can buy something, right? So in this case, I'm going to outsource, right? So this kind of these make and buy decisions, make or buy. And if I'm going to buy, I can outsource. If I'm going to make, I can offshore in kind of different places, right? And there's some challenges in going international. So we're, of course, talking about lead time that is long in distance, but there are other things that are kind of more complicated. For example, time differences doesn't seem to influence a lot. Just say, okay, we have different times in different places. But if you think about, I worked in Europe and I had a supplier that I had to deal with was from US. Depending on the time of the day, you they were close, right? So vice versa also occurred, right? Europe is ahead of us, so when we woke up, it's already afternoon. That if we don't communicate quickly, they're not working anymore, right? So you have some kind of this delay that can happen. Cultural difference, of course, very important. You need to know the culture of places, and they have very, very different cultures. Language barriers, although English is the business language, and people know in a certain kind of level of management. In other levels, it's kind of more difficult, and also kind of depending on what the country you're talking to. Difference in units of measure. I don't know why the rest of the world insists in having a metric system. I know we should make everyone use your system or our system. But that also could cause some problems, customization to different markets, ethical standards, and all that. Okay. But you guys have classes that you talk about international business, so I'm not going to go over too much there. Last slide of chapter 12 and 14. I want you guys to do these two questions about the company. So create a situation where your business have to have the options of making them by themselves, or outsource to some other company in US, or outsource and offshore, so another company outside the US. Okay, so I would suggest you create a table and you say, okay, this company have this component or this service, and we don't know if we're going to make it ourselves, if we're going to have it done in another company, US, or it's going to be another company in another country, right? And then you say, what is the pro and cons of each option and the reasons for, okay, we think should be this one, okay? And then the last one, create a problem situation that we can use the total cost model or the qualitative analysis where you have to select a supplier. So I'm gonna kind of give you a very important insight here. Is most of the points the teams lost this time with the problems and the situations. So make sure you create a situation that I can read like a problem, right? Do you remember remember all the problems that we went in class? There was a story, right? This company have this situation and they want to decide this, and this is the data, right? And this is how I want you guys to structure the problem situation, not just throwing the numbers, not just or just throwing the numbers and don't just telling the story and don't show me the results or don't put the question, right? So like everything is a problem, question, math, and answer. Okay? And I think that's it for chapter 12 and 14. See you guys next week. Have a nice weekend.